Hello and welcome back to the Micro Learning Institute. In this short tutorial we look at the role of communications in project management. Now, any project manager will tell you that communications throughout the delivery of a project is absolutely vital to the success of that project. So therefore it would be very unwise for a project manager not to have some formal processes in place throughout the project to ensure that communication is well managed throughout the project. So this short tutorial looks at a number of different approaches to managing communications on a project. So the first thing we look at is the concept of a very simple communications plan. And this communications plan, the objective of it is to ensure that all of the stakeholders on the project are communicating effectively with each other throughout the project. So in this example, we'll pick a number of different stakeholders. We'll have the project sponsor, the project team, who are the actual people who are tasked with delivery of the project, and maybe the final customer as well for whom the project is going to be delivered. So the purpose of a communications plan is to identify what information each stakeholder needs, how often they need that information, through which medium that communication will be delivered to them, and if there's any response required from them and when that response should be delivered. So we can see that this framework of communications plan sets very clear expectations at the start of the project for the communication between some key stakeholders. So looking at some detail here, we can see that the sponsor perhaps, may only be interested in information about any problems that might exist with the costs on the project or the schedule on the project. So the sponsor is not particularly interested in the minute detail of each project task. Similarly, the sponsor may only be interested in this information on a monthly basis. They won't need to be updated on a day-to-day or even week-by-week basis. And maybe the most effective way to engage with the sponsor is a face-to-face meeting, so a short face-to-face meeting, perhaps once a month. And also the project manager and the sponsor can set an expectation that if the project manager says that there's an issue with the costs on the project or an issue with the schedule, that the sponsor can go and engage and lobby with the senior management of the organization and reply to the project manager within perhaps 3 days to say yes, we're okay with that additional cost spend, or yes, we're okay with the schedule change that you have proposed, or maybe we're not okay and the project manager has to adapt their plans. But this detail provides a very clear expectation between the project manager and the sponsor around communications throughout the delivery of the project. Contrast this with the information requirements of the project team. So whereas the project sponsor needed just to know some high-level issues around project cost and schedule, the project team will need to know detailed information about the project costs, about the schedule, and about the quality delivery of the project. And they'll need to know that on a weekly basis, because again, the project will be rolling out week by week. Similarly, it's best that this happens at a team meeting with all of the project team attending, so that the project team can communicate the required detail to each other throughout the meeting. And again, one would expect, or the project manager would expect, that any particular response that would be needed to that information would occur immediately at that meeting. So this would require all of the project team to come to the meeting with all of their information ready to hand so that they can exchange information on an immediate basis at the meeting. Now, again, contrast this profile of information requirements for the project team and the sponsor with the information that the customer may require. So sometimes the customer maybe is involved in the testing of the final solution, the testing of the final product. So really the customer just needs to be told, is just interested in knowing, what do you want us to do? What are the actions that are required by the customer? And again, once a week might be adequate to advise the customer what the project manager needs them to do. And maybe the email is the best approach to communicating that information to the customer. And again, 5 days, the customer can tell us next week how they got on with the actions that we required them to do. So this format of communication plan is simple, it's very often included in the project charter, and it sets a clear expectation between all of the key stakeholders around the communication that's going to occur between them and what the detail of that communication is going to be throughout the delivery of the project. Another approach to managing communications on a project is what's called a RACIC. Now, RACIC stands for who is responsible for each task on the project. A, who approves each task. S, is there any support needed for each task, i.e. is there somebody needed to actually do the task. I, is there anyone that we need to inform about a particular task. And C, is there anyone that we need to consult with where we need maybe external expertise. So the RACIC brings together the list of tasks. So again, we have developed a list of tasks perhaps to develop our Gantt chart. So the RACIC combines those tasks with all of the key stakeholders on the project. So here we see on the y-axis we see all the tasks A, B, C up to task I, and on the x-axis across the top we see all of the key stakeholders of the project manager, the customer, the team members, the senior management team, and all the support staff. And this RACIC now forces the project manager and the team to identify for each task who's responsible, who approves, who is the support resource needed to actually do the work, is there anyone we need to inform, and is there anyone with whom we need to consult. And again, you can see that the requirements of each task and each stakeholder are different. However, this again creates very clear expectations across communication throughout the project. So whether we use the simple approach that we used in the first example or the more comprehensive RACIC approach depends on the risk profile of the project and the information requirements that are required throughout the project. Thank you very much for watching this short tutorial on project communications from the Microlearning Institute.